The nerfs have officially been announced. We've got 5 cards getting some pretty significant changes.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
That's right, 5 cards gonna be changed as early as next week, apparently, according to this announcement. So let's go ahead and talk about these changes. Luna's Pocket Galaxy up first, going back to 7 mana. Blizzard just pretty recently buffed this to 5. It's been causing some problems since, and it goes back to 7. I can't believe they just went right back. They didn't even try for a middle ground at 6. Perhaps that's a good sign in some ways that they're like willing to admit their mistakes, and that won't scare them from buffing cards in the future, or at the very least, I hope that's an interpretation. Little surprised we didn't see a different direction on this one, but will it remain powerful? I'm not sure, right? We have a lot of evidence that says Luna's Pocket Galaxy at 7 was just way too slow. It never worked in the past. Nowadays, it works at 5. But there are new cards. This deck has kind of formed itself. My guess is that it won't work again. I just don't think it's going to make sense at 7. It comes so much later in the game. It makes it harder to do things on the same turn. So, like, for instance, now you can, in the late game, play, Luna's Pocket Galaxy. Then you can Arcane Intellect and still play a couple minions with the remaining mana. You couldn't do that with this version of Luna's Pocket Galaxy. So I think those small just mana lineups change a little bit here and there, and that really affects the swing potential of a card like this. Plus, you're just committing a lot more, and it's coming later in the game. So I think just based on the precedents that we've seen before, it won't be as good. Will this deck completely die? I don't think so. You might still see a Luna's Pocket Galaxy in one of these decks, particularly with Tortol and Pilgrim. It becomes more reliable to draw it and maybe less punishing. So yeah, there's still some hope. I think it'll stick around as maybe like a tier 3 deck or something, but I do think it's significantly going to hamper the power level of Mage and will not be the dominating force that it is today. So moving on, another reason Mage might have some problems, Conjurer's Calling going to 4 mana. This is another change that's not at all surprising. Both of these cards were ones I recommended changing. I didn't think we should address Mountain Giant as a problem because putting Conjurers to 4 to me does help fix it. Just slows it down a turn. It gives your opponent a couple things. More time to draw into removal or get the mana necessary for removal, but also just more time to play minions into the field so that they can trade into a Mountain Giant if necessary. Plus, it just reduces the turn 5 Khadgar Conjurer's Calling follow-up to a turn 4 Mountain Giant, so it kind of breaks that line as well. So all in all, only a 1 mana change, but pretty significant. And across both versions of this, with the twin spell, it's actually kind of like you're spending 2 extra mana total. So a little bit of a double punitive nerf here compared to what we normally see with nerf. So I think this remains a playable card in a lot of ways. Conjurer's Calling is just really powerful style effect. We've seen similar effects cost more in C play with things like Carnivorous Cube. So I don't by any means think this card is dead, but the power level of Mage will certainly be restricted quite a bit by this change and the Luna's Pocket Galaxy change. The deck's going to have to reshift itself, or the class at least, maybe make it more aggressive. Conjurers will be less commonly seen, but there will still be decks both now and in the future that are able to utilize this card successfully. Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, another card that I guessed right on what Blizzard would do, pushing this sucker to 9 mana. Now, this is probably not the change I would make. I think keeping it at 7 mana, but just changing how the rush works, reduces the bad feelings this card generates over time, over the course of a long game, because it can really become oppressive. 10, 20 turns in, it's still making an enormous influence. And the fact that you push this to 9 doesn't change that much, because it's not usually like the first couple turns of Dr. Boom where it feels so bad. It's those turns like 5, 6, 7, after it's been up a while, and they really start countering your board with rush minions and generating a ton of resources and gaining a lot of armor. And I think this version of Dr. Boom retains the ability to do that, especially in slower matchups, those control v control, or even sometimes against mid-range decks. This does slow it down a little bit against aggro, but often against aggro decks, Dr. Boom on 7 could still feel like a problem. If they had a lot of pressure, it was hard to just sometimes only heal 7 on that turn, so you'd try to find more reactive things to do anyway, playing your brawls and your removals instead. So I don't know if this changes the metrics on Boom enough. I think it might still feel like a problem card at 9, but it never hurts to slow things down for a powerful card like this. Makes their turn 8 weaker, makes that turn 9 weaker. Maybe there are some decks that get over the hump a little bit sooner, can push for that final board where they're not getting denied by rush mechs immediately. Maybe the Zilliax swings don't happen as fast, those sorts of things. So probably the right kind of change in a lot of ways, that it's more subtle. I'm just worried it's not going to be enough. We'll have to see if this one goes deep enough on Dr. Boom. So I know Blizzard's hesitant to change like card text. That's why I guessed that this is what would happen, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. I would have liked to see the rush aspect instead getting changed in some way or another. But nonetheless, a subtle change. I hope it's enough. Certainly, Dr. Boom is going to be rotating out of standard format in the very near future. So, completely killing the card, I think, would have been a problem. So I'm surprised to say I don't actually hate this implementation at all. I hope it gets there, and I think it's probably a good change. So now moving on to Extra Arms, another one of the cards that had kind of been leaked that we already knew this idea was coming. Going back to 3 mana. Again, another complete reversion of a buff we saw previously. Extra Arms was not popular at 3 mana in the past. Certainly at 2 mana, it's helped Empowered Combo Priest, a deck that's very popular and very powerful in the Hearthstone meta right now, particularly at higher legend and higher ranks. And at 3 mana, you know what? I think Extra Arms might still be relatively playable because this combo priest deck with all the Psychopomp stuff and High Priest Ahmet, we hadn't seen that in the past. So this version of Extra Arms never had a chance to interact with this new version of Priest. But I think at 3 mana, it's still an okay sort of play. It does not follow up on a turn 1 like Northshire Cleric nearly as nicely, so that may make a bigger impact than I'm predicting. If they can't seem to get out early and continue to stay ahead on board, Priest can have some problems, but maybe some Power Word Shields or maybe just a shift in the deck a little bit or the mana curve a little bit could help shore that up while still keeping Extra Arms playable as a good way to add some quick instant stats to the board. So it is a significant nerf, right? It's a 50% increase in the mana. You increasing it by 1 is like half of its mana cost when it was at 2. So it's not necessarily guaranteed to come back to life. There may be other more suitable things to do for 3 mana, even in a combo priest deck. But don't be shocked if this still makes the cut because combo priest is so good. That said, combo priest will certainly lose a little bit of its power level, probably falling down to a tier 2 deck instead of a tier 1 deck. So finally here we've got Barnes finally getting a nerf. I can't believe it. It's taken forever. He's going to 5 mana instead of 4. No other changes here, and completely reasonable. Again, a fairly subtle change, but the important thing with a card like Barnes is just slowing it down a little bit, and that's really good. Also, notably, when you're looking at the 5 mana slot for Priest, sometimes that's when they want to use board clears or removal. Often turn 5 is a pivotal point where you can start to swing the board. So if they can get ahead on 4 and do something, and then leverage the big Barnes resummon stuff on turn 5, on turn 6, they don't need those board swings. But often if you haven't done anything until turn 5, you're going to be facing a real dilemma where it's like, do I resolve this board or do I play my Barnes? And I think that's going to be a little bit of a breaking point, that even though this is a subtle change from a mana standpoint, it is going to cause more problems than you realize for big priests, and notably impact them in a pretty negative way. Also, it kind of breaks a Shadow Essence on turn 6, because on turn 6, if you're playing a Barnes on 5, you're going to want to be rezzing the stuff that you got off your Barnes, not just resummoning another thing off your Shadow Essence. So there are a couple direct curve impacts here by shifting this 1 mana that probably adds up to really more than 1 mana at the end of the day, as far as how much Priest really feels the pain on this change. So all in all, gives aggro decks more time, gives other decks more time to draw into like silences or removal cards or whatever it might be. So great change. I think it is the right number to go to as well. I don't think they were ever going to change the card text on Barnes, so this is exactly what I would have done as well, and glad to finally see this one hit. And there you go. Those are the new nerfs announced. Nothing too crazy surprising. I didn't really know if Priest would get nerfed. I took some guesses. I thought maybe Northshire Cleric would finally get the hit. So not outside the realm of reason, but Extra Arms was a bit surprising. I mean, obviously, once we saw it leaked, it wasn't surprising, but prior to the leak, I was a bit shocked to hear Extra Arms was the target. But Conjurers and Lunas made a ton of sense. Certainly, Barnes makes a lot of sense as well. So, and Dr. Boom Mad Genius made a ton of sense too. So, all in all, pretty good changes, I think. And we'll have some positive impacts on the meta. Hopefully, Mage doesn't fall too far from having 2 cards nerfed simultaneously. I don't want to see the class destroyed at all. So I almost wish there was some way to buff other things or that they'll still remain relevant in the meta. I'm worried. We'll keep an eye on it, and it might be sad. And Hunter may come to dominance as well now with Mage and Warrior getting hurt with these nerfs. So a lot to keep an eye on here. Hopefully it pans out for the best. I'm going to put my faith in Blizzard this time and assume they made some sound, subtle, careful decisions here that don't completely break the meta. Because ultimately, although I think some of these changes were necessary, we're not in a bad spot in Hearthstone. So I'm a little bit scared to rock the boat. All that said, you guys share your thoughts in the comments below on these changes. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, game on.